Episode 14 The Wizard and the Sheep. A new painting appeared in the temple of the Keeper of the Knowledge. Bright and colorful, it attracted attention and gave rise to a lot of questions from students, like any sample of objective art. Rejoicing at the opportunity to gain new knowledge, they were looking at the picture with interest. At first glance, it was not too surreal, like some of the others, for example, the house or the skull. But even in this artwork, there was symbolism and a deep meaning hidden behind every small detail. It depicted a picturesque forest edge where a flock of sheep grazed peacefully, and a gray-bearded wizard in a cap poured golden magical light on the sheep from his palm. In the other hand, the wizard held a long magic staff, and behind him was a campfire, where one of the lambs was roasting on a spit. If one looked closely, one could see that each sheep was wearing a mask. There were masks of a lion and a bear, a hare, a fox, an eagle, a zebra, and even a mouse. "I wonder what kind of sheep they are, and why they are wearing masks," one of the students, a short girl with short brown hair, asked thoughtfully. "And who is this sorcerer?" pondered a brown-eyed tall guy. "And why are these sheep so calm, as if they don't understand that soon it will be their turn to roast on the fire?" added a blue-eyed middle-aged woman. And at that moment, the teacher's sonorous voice rang out behind the students. "There is a legend about a wizard and sheep," he said. All the students turned toward the sage at once and parted with trepidation, letting him pass to the picture. "Beloved teacher, will you tell us this legend?" the girl asked, and nodded at the canvas. "And what meaning is hidden here?" The Keeper of the Knowledge smiled warmly, looked around all the students with his loving gaze, and began his story. "There was a wizard who had sheep," he started, "and those sheep were constantly running away from him in different directions, and he was all exhausted, collecting them back in the meadows every day. And so he began to think about how to make the sheep stop running away. And then he hypnotized those sheep. He made each of them believe that it was not a sheep at all, but a magician, a lion, a vulture, or a bear." "Is that why they wear masks on their faces?" a young student asked, pointing to the sheep in the painting. "Yes, that is right, Sinya. These masks show that the wizard has made them believe who they supposedly are. In fact, even wearing these masks, they remain in sheep's clothing, and are neither a lion nor a vulture, nor even a magician. And the wizard has also insinuated to them that he is their kind master, who does them a lot of good. And the sheep, under the influence of that suggestion, did not even know that in fact the wizard was using them with might and main, shearing wool, slaughtering and eating them." "Now it is clear why they are so calmly chewing their grass and are not afraid," the blue-eyed woman remarked. "Yes," the sage confirmed. "As soon as the wizard applied his hypnosis, the sheep stopped running away." The Keeper of the Knowledge paused and turned to the students with a question. "Whom do you think these sheep symbolize?" The students began to think and talk quietly, and a hum rang out in the hall. Could it be people? Finally, a thin man in a white bandana spoke. "That is right, Igor. Well done." The teacher praised and began to explain again. "So that people do not run away anywhere and do not try to free themselves from captivity. For this, we have been taught that we are not sheep at all, but someone else. Someone imagines himself a magician, for example, psychics and parapsychologists. Someone imagines himself a lion, politicians, businessmen. Someone is an eagle, for example, scientists. Every person imagines himself to be someone and does not really see who he is. "Teacher, who is this wizard?" Senya asked, pointing to the figure with the staff. "The one who hypnotized us?" "I will tell you about it today," the sage replied with a mysterious smile. "But first I will explain what for. This has been done so that devils, larvae, and other evil spirits could pull energy from people and feed on it, and to make sure that people would not notice anything and not be afraid, everyone has been hypnotized." "But how?" The girl was surprised. "Through social stereotypes, through TV, advertising, movies, through our parents, teachers at school, and so on. We are deluded into our roles and are forced to play them. And that is why we only see the masks they have put on us. We believe that we are some kind of wizards, lions and eagles, that we cannot be afraid of anything. We diligently perform roles and believe that we live our own lives. And being in such ignorance, we continue to feed devils and larvae with our energy." "Is it true that if these sheep realized that the wizard was deceiving them, they could escape from him?" Igor asked, pointing to the figure of the gray-bearded sorcerer. "Yes, that is right," the sage confirmed. "And if people realized that they were being devoured by larvae, then they would decide to avoid their fate and stop being a kind of battery that devils feed on." "Keeper, but what should people do for this?" the blue-eyed disciple asked the sage inquisitively, meeting his gaze. "In order for a sheep to escape from this wizard," the teacher nodded toward the picture, "it must see everything realistically. It needs to see this mask that has been put on it, understand that this is just hypnosis and suggestion. If all these masks are dropped, it will see itself for real. And a person will understand that he is being used by devils, larvae, and other evil spirits in order to feed on his energy. Until we see our masks, we will not understand anything, and we will continue this game, play the roles imposed on us, and feed the dark forces." When the keeper fell silent, a disciple in a long orange robe stepped forward. A lithe, well-built guy, with ordinary facial features. In his eyes shone the fire of the knowledge and infinite gratitude to the sage for the opportunity to see the truth. "Beloved teacher, may I share my story?" he asked, coming closer and respectfully bowing his head. After receiving an approving look of support from the keeper of the knowledge, the man began his story. "When you helped me see everything for real, I tried to save other people, starting first with relatives who were close. I approached my mother and said that society had imposed on us the roles of son and mother, and we had been hypnotized, insinuated into this, and we could at any moment free ourselves from these roles and stop playing them. Just do what we like and what the soul is meant for. But she thought I was completely crazy and invited a psychiatrist to examine me. She wanted to put me in a hospital." The student sighed and fell silent, gathering his thoughts. It was obvious that it was still hard for him to remember this. Then the teacher looked at the student with the wise gaze of a person who had often faced such a situation, and smiled at him, sending rays of support. Meeting the keeper's gaze, the disciple smiled back and continued. Nothing worked because she didn't want to see herself for real and free herself from her role of a mother. She did not understand at all that society had imposed this role on her. That's why she thought I was crazy. But in fact, on the contrary, I began to see the world objectively and how it all works. Others were not going to take off their masks either. No one understood, and everyone continued to diligently play roles and feed the devils with their energy. Ilya, thank you for sharing this. People get used to their roles a lot, and it is hard for them to even think that they can somehow discard this role and stop playing it, the teacher said in a calm, even voice, in which there was not even the slightest bit of condemnation. Only regret from understanding that it was impossible to help everyone. That is why we have to see it all clearly now. And when we are able to do this, only then will we be able to free ourselves from this fate. That is when we will be free. After a short pause, the keeper looked at the student with warmth and continued. If your mother understood how she has been hypnotized, he began to explain, that opinions like, look, everyone has mothers, sons, daughters, had been imposed on her in society since childhood, then she would be able to discard this role. But since she did not even want to think about being hypnotized, she could not part with the role. Therefore, the first thing we should do is to see that we have been hypnotized. And while a person does not see this, he thinks, no, there is no hypnosis. I am actually free. Then he continues to play the roles that have been imposed on him. The student nodded to the keeper with sincere gratitude for explanations and for the opportunity to express his feelings and thoughts. Meanwhile, another student, Tatiana, raised her hand, who had her own question. Teacher, how do we understand what kind of hypnosis we have? She asked, wanting to understand this issue in as much detail as possible. By the thoughts that come to mind most often? For example, if I often want to be good and expect praise from everyone, then is this my main hypnosis that I need to work with first? Hypnosis manifests itself in the fact that we believe any thought that comes to mind, that we consider it our thought, the keeper gently explained. But in fact, we do not have our own thoughts, and all our thoughts come from outside, instilled thoughts. If, for example, we lived in the taiga without people and the influence of society, then we would not have any thoughts at all, because there would not be those who suggested them. The sage paused and carefully looked at the reaction of the students, realizing that this knowledge was quite difficult to realize and accept. He was silent for a few seconds, giving them the opportunity to think and pass the information through themselves, after which he continued to speak. But in ordinary life, any of our thoughts was once put into our head by someone, and until we see this hypnosis, we think, this is my thought, and I cannot be wrong. I think that is right. And thinking this way, we defend this thought that is not ours, and we find new arguments. And if we thought, an idea came to my mind, who inspired me with it, when did it happen, we would remember, for example, that we once heard it on TV, or from teachers at school, who said the same thing, or some friends at the institute. And when we remembered it, we would understand that this thought was only a consequence of hypnosis, that it was not our thought. And when we understand that since this idea was not ours, then it is not necessary to follow it. And if we think, this is my thought, then everything is right, I never make mistakes in life, then this thought completely takes hold of us, and we cannot escape from the hypnosis of this wizard. With these words, the keeper of the knowledge stretched out his hand and pointed to the sorcerer, pouring the stream of golden pollen onto the sheep. Teacher, and if everything in the world happens according to the will of God, and there is a particle of God in the soul of every person, does that mean that God hypnotizes himself? Senya asked. Does that make any sense? And here we come to the question of who is the magician in the picture, said the sage, and again directed his attention to the canvas. In this case, it is nature. And what are its goals? He looked attentively at the student, then shifted his gaze to the others, urging everyone to think. Maybe the reproduction of living beings, Tatiana suggested, to which she received an approving nod from the keeper. That is right. Every living being living in nature must reproduce, feed offspring, and then it can die. The purpose of nature is to continue itself. Next, the struggle for existence. In nature, one species always devours another. The strong devours the weak. Mosquitoes drink blood. Cows eat grass. Lions eat deer, and so on. Devils also need to be fed somehow. What do you think they eat? The sage asked, looking at the disciples. Our negative emotions, Senya answered after a short pause. And bad thoughts, Ilya added. That is right, the teacher confirmed. Therefore, it is necessary for nature that people have these very negative emotions and bad thoughts. This is how this physical world works. There are food chains in it, and a person is not at the top of them, as is commonly thought. Nature needs people to follow its goals, that is, to reproduce and also to be included in the food chain and feed the devils. And how do it in such a way that a person does not guess anything? Hypnotize him, Igor said half-interrogatively. That is right. Otherwise he may resist and will not want to serve as food for devils and larvae. He will not experience negative emotions, but only sublime ones, will not succumb to anger, and will begin to think only bright thoughts. And then the devils will have nothing to eat. And nature cannot allow this. Therefore it asks the question, what should I do? And like this very magician, it decides to hypnotize people. And now a person no longer understands who he is, but thinks that he himself is a wizard, or some kind of eagle or lion, and he starts playing the game imposed on him, and nothing good comes out of it all. Teacher, but why do wars happen? Does nature also need them? Asked a young brown-eyed student, who until now had only listened attentively and followed the conversation but did not ask questions. Yes, Diana, that is right, the sage replied. Nature also needs wars, because this way there will be much more food for devils and larvae. That is why everything happens. People suffer and die en masse. If people really saw all this, they would immediately lay down their weapons. But nature has made it so that a person cannot realize all this just like that. To do this, you need to study for a long time and make an effort. That is why we are here, to get rid of hypnosis and see everything for real. The keeper of the knowledge finished and looked at the students again, waiting for new questions. This time, an old but strong, muscular man raised his hand. Teacher, do I remember correctly that hypnosis for us is not only social attitudes, but also hormones that make us spend energy on a constant search for a sexual partner and sexual satisfaction? How realistic is it to resist it at all? After all, this is not just a thought, but an effect on our physical body. Is it really possible to defeat this hormone in yourself through understanding? Nikolai, thank you for the question, said the sage, after listening to the man. Yes, you understand correctly, and it really is possible to win. Tantra says that there is sexual energy, and it can be used not only for procreation, but also for spiritual development. It is usually thrown out in the form of an orgasm. And if we practice Tantra, then we lift it up, and with the help of this sexual energy, the chakras begin to work better. Then the energy enters Sahasrara, and there we begin to merge with the divine. It turns out that if a person thought rationally about sex, he would see everything completely differently? Nikolai asked in surprise. Yes, differently. If people rationally perceived the possibilities of sexual energy and this hormone, they would have already come out from under hypnosis. They would focus on spiritual development and not waste this energy thoughtlessly. The keeper of the knowledge looked again at the picture with the wizard and the flock of sheep, looked at the students who were now on the way to the truth, and just at that moment, one of the students had a new question. It was a middle-aged woman with pleasant features, slightly touched by the first wrinkles. "Teacher, I've heard this parable about the wizard before," she said, addressing the sage with extreme respect and awe. "But I interpreted it in such a way that the wizard is a government and a state that hypnotizes people, giving them some role in society. It's like you're free, you vote, you choose something, and that's why a person thinks I'm free. But in fact, he remains in slavery to society, yet he still obeys its laws. Is this a more primitive understanding, or can it also be interpreted in this way?" "It is good that you thought about it, Anna," the keeper of the knowledge replied, looking at the woman with love and acceptance. "Yes, there is such an understanding, but it is very simple. Think about it. These rulers themselves, are they really free? They are not enlightened. They are also under the influence of higher forces that control them. And even more so. Yes, they are the guides of these cosmic forces, but they are unconscious guides. They themselves do not understand the true reasons why they do so, and not differently. They are especially strongly influenced by planetary forces, these very wizards. And the ruler just thinks that he is a lion or an eagle. That is, he is under the same hypnosis, just like other people." Anna listened intently to the words of the teacher, trying not to miss a word, and to understand the very essence of the knowledge transmitted by the sage. When he finished, her eyes shone with the awareness that she was receiving right here and now, at this moment, touching the light energy of the keeper. Can we assume that hypnosis is a kunda buffer that does not allow us to realize who we really are? She asked another question. Yes, it is, the sage confirmed, because a person consists of beliefs and is not based on understanding or logic. For example, a person believes that communism is good, or that fascism, or something else. That is, he takes it on faith and begins to adhere to an ideology invented by someone and begins to follow it. Teacher, and these beliefs are hypnosis, right? Senya asked. Yes, that is right, he replied. Therefore, it is worth getting rid of the belief and starting to understand everything more deeply. How it all works. And then the hypnosis will disappear. But no one wants to understand anything. Suddenly, Nikolai stepped forward, and the teacher realized that he wanted to say something. He looked approvingly at the student. If I may, I would like to give an example. I remember when the Soviet government was abolished, and many of my relatives and friends began to get upset. How can it be? We believe them. We don't want everything to collapse. It turns out that this belief was stuck in them so much that even when they were told the truth, they still continued to hold on to the lie. And I even personally knew a man who committed suicide because of the collapse of the Union. Yes, this is very illustrative, said the teacher, and in his voice there was a flash of regret that so many people were under the power of hypnosis. That is why the most important thing is to realize it more deeply, to see our masks and roles. and then we can part with beliefs in hypnosis." "Teacher, I want to ask you something," Anna said. "We realize that we need to be free, and we understand that we are under hypnosis. But often, it is just for a few seconds or minutes. The rest of the time, hypnosis continues to influence us. I would like to know if there is any benefit in positive hypnosis. When we practice a scientific trance, for example, we create the right attitudes for ourselves, and at the same time pay attention to waking up and seeing the inspired thoughts in ourselves. Is it right to act like this?" "Anna, this is a good start," the keeper of the knowledge nodded approvingly. "Let positive attitudes replace negative ones." "And for example, if you used to believe in communism, and you have now begun to believe in Christianity, is it better?" Nikolai asked. "A little better, but even this will remain a pure belief capable of unleashing wars. Remember the Crusades." The teacher paused, giving Nikolai and other students the opportunity to realize this knowledge. "Therefore, it is better to replace negative attitudes with higher ideas, but they are not easy to replace. In the end, we have to come to understand everything, and for this, you need to want to understand and strive for it constantly. It is necessary to know everything, to understand everything, to comprehend logically, to penetrate deeply, to see the essence of things. Only then can we free ourselves from hypnosis." "Beloved teacher, please tell me. I heard that we feed the moon with negative emotions," Tatiana decided to ask. "And if we experience sublime emotions and get free from this hypnosis, then do we begin to nourish the sun or some other planet? Or do we stop feeding them?" The teacher smiled, his bright, transparent smile. "Then we begin to nourish the angels and the sun. And this means that together with the angels and the sun, we begin to form a single circle and a single system." The teacher looked at the students again to feel their condition. Now they were filled with knowledge, and they needed time to accept and realize it within themselves, to come to valuable realizations, to outline further steps for spiritual growth and development. Then he smoothly raised his hands in front of him and began to cite sublime lines, bestowing rays of pure energy of goodness and light on all those who had gathered around him. "I look at the symbol of the morning dawn. I look outside, but its essence is inside. That clear light is the foundation of them all, that illuminates the dreams of our desires. Let the prana of the sun burn, my sacred eye that can't be seen, that eye of wisdom that will shed the truth when you finally perceive. You have a closer look into the world. It's only a symbol of what's inside." We invite you to join spiritual seminars, workshops, and retreats hosted by the Leader Masters. Reveal your superpowers, find your predestination, and accumulate power to gain well-being and bring your goals to life. Send an email saying, "I want to join the seminar" to our mailbox, and we will give you all the information. See you soon.